Nothing better than watching some good old YTV. Wait, Teletoon? But this is YTV. What's going on here?
What the hell? Where am I? Oh hey, Teletoon's on. On October 17th, 1997, a new TV channel focusing exclusively on animation appeared on Canadian airwaves, and its name was Teletoon, the animation station. The channel was, at the time, very diverse with its programming, with preschooler content early in the morning, progressing into more mature content further along into the day, to adult programming late at night. The channel was also chock full of Canadian-made content and shows from all around the world. Today on the Teletoon Retrospective, we're going to look at the very first show that aired on the network. Oh boy, it's time! I wonder what the first show's gonna be. Oh, fuck.
Only I didn't say fudge. I said the word. The big one. The queen mother of dirty words. The F-dash-dash-dash word.
Yes, the very first show to premiere on Teletoon is probably one of the more controversial series in the form of Caillou. Based on the successful line of books by Hélène Despeteau, which started in 1989, this show is about the 4-year-old Caillou who is learning about growing up along with his parents and younger sister Rosie. The first few seasons started out each story with a grandmother gathering her grandchildren so she could tell them a story about Caillou. Which is weird because sometimes she just tells these stories out of the blue without any kind of context. Okay kids, it's time for another Caillou story.
But Grandma, we don't want to hear a story, we just want to take a nap.
You're gonna listen to my stories and you're gonna freaking like them, you little bastards.
When's Maddie gonna take us home?
When she makes bail. In recent years, the show has garnered rather a lot of hate from social media, late-night comedians,
You, Caillou! Grow some hair and leave the house!
and even public press. In an article from the National Post in 2017, a writer claimed that it was quite possibly the world's most universally reviled children's program. There were also hate groups that arose, and countless animated videos featuring Caillou as either the main antagonist or just greatly punished.
Caillou, how dare you make go anime videos while grounded? That's it. You are grounded for 420 extra years.
But does Caillou deserve all the hate it gets? Let's find out, shall we? So let's start with point one of all the hate, the temper tantrums. Dear God, there are plenty of those in this series, but there is one glaring flaw in this argument that people tend to forget. He's 4 years old! Don't act like you didn't do the same thing when you were that age. It's like the terrible twos. Of course situations like this happens. He is still learning the difference between right from wrong. It's a learning process. A child's attitude doesn't change overnight. It's a gradual process. Though the attitude definitely was also a problem as well.
Go play with your own toys! Rosie!
The first episode of this series, we are introduced to the family along with their new baby daughter Rosie. Caillou in this situation starts to get jealous from the lack of attention and decides to pinch her cheek. Could have been worse. Oh, no! Point number 2, the parenting. Mom and Dad here seem to be very lenient when it comes to dealing with Caillou and his outbursts, often giving Caillou what he wants after an outburst, which sometimes goes against some of the morals that the show is trying to teach. Something that another show does the same, and yet it's still somehow successful. If anything, his grandparents were the more understanding ones and actually teaching Caillou the moral with more creative ideas, especially the fact that both of them are fond of the outdoors, something a child would love at that age. Kids love to be curious, and teaching them something in a way that keeps them curious is good for the long run. The main point is that if the parenting was much better, it may have led to less amounts of temper tantrums. And point number 3, the lack of educational value. To quote the National Times article again, unlike most children's programming, Caillou makes almost no attempt to educate its young audience. There are no veiled math problems, spelling lessons, or morality tales. It's just calm, non-threatening, bright-colored people navigating everyday tasks. So what you're saying is, why can't we be more like Sesame Street? It taught kids about letters and numbers. Well, you're right. Sesame Street did do all that. But you ever consider the other shows that didn't teach math and letters and all that? The first being TVO's big preschool success, Today's Special. It was all about a group of friends teaching Jeff, a mannequin who comes to life at night, about different things in life. Another was Shining Time Station, which focused on teamwork, cooperation, and responsibility. And finally, there would be Arthur, a show that has taught us so much in 20 years. Sportsmanship, cooperation, trust in friends, and the most important one of all, having a library card.
Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
It's interesting that it can teach us that despite having another well-known spoiled character in kid television history, DW.
And I hate spelling!
God, how I hate her. So to say this show has a lack of educational value, it's not entirely true. It's teaching more about life lessons that a preschooler would need further down the road. Caillou, for the times he had his temper tantrums, and believe me, there were plenty, there were also instances that taught him and the kids at home about patience and cooperation. An interesting study from the University of Virginia had 2 groups of kids watching 2 shows while also drawing pictures. The 2 shows chosen were Caillou and SpongeBob SquarePants. The results were rather interesting. The kids that were drawing during SpongeBob episodes were actually drawing worse than the ones that were watching Caillou. It's not that the drawings were bad. SpongeBob is a show that is easily distracting, as there is always something happening and more in your face. Caillou showed that it helped with cognitive thinking. In the show's 3rd season, the grandma scenes were basically ditched, and instead we have a trio of puppets, including the family cat Gilbert, Caillou's toys, a dinosaur named Rexy, and a teddy bear named Teddy. How original. And a squirrel named Dee Dee, introduced in the 4th season. These segments were only used for when it aired on PBS to fill up the commercial time that would have been absent on the network, whereas Teletoon or Treehouse didn't have these segments at all. The show lasted from 1997 to 2008, with 4 seasons and 128 episodes. It continued in 2010 for an extra season of 26 episodes. In 2016, a new web series was created for YouTube and Amazon Prime. It even had a holiday movie in 2003. The show had many homes, starting with Teletoon, then got past to Treehouse TV, and then finally to PBS, with reruns lasting all the way to January 6, 2021. When PBS made the announcement on Twitter that the series was being cancelled, at least they had the decency to bow it out gracefully, telling kids that while it may be over, new fun shows will be added in its stead. Can't say the same thing about the responses. Oosh. So does Caillou deserve all the hate? In some ways, I can see it being justified. However, I think the hate goes a bit overboard. It is a show that teaches simple morals, however, with a protagonist that can be seen as very mean-spirited. While it is a slower-paced series than many other shows at the time, it was inconsistent when it came to the method of telling the story. This one was a tough call. If you think Caillou is good, then more power to you, but I think it definitely had some things going against it, and made it harder to see it in a positive light as an adult. Next time on the Teletoon Retrospective, we're gonna talk about...
Oh, that was weird. Let's try this again. That's better. Now let's get back on track.
Next time on the YTV Retrospective.
I feel like you're wearing what Rachel Maddow would wear to a pumpkin patch.